I'm Vicki Hogarth, and welcome to Southwest Magazine. New Brunswickers head to the polls on October 21st for the next provincial election. Here to tell us about his platform and his party is the leader of the Progressive Conservatives, Blaine Higgs. And we will be later joined in the show by the candidate for St. Croix, Bockus. Thank you so much for sitting down with me today.
My pleasure, Vicki.
Because it's election time, I have to ask all leaders, all candidates, the same questions, give the same amount of time. So please bear with me. The first question is, what do you believe are the most pressing issues facing New Brunswick today?
Well, certainly healthcare has to come to the top of the heap, and you know, if you get into other issues around affordability and our housing challenges. But if I stick on healthcare for a moment, you know, we've had 90 to 100,000 new people come into the province. That's certainly put additional demand, but we needed to have more people here. So it's been some of the pains of growth. The opportunity in healthcare, because we've spent, you know, we're $1 billion more a year in healthcare than we were 5 years ago. So it's like a $3.9 billion budget item. But you know, I'd spend any amount of money in healthcare if it was that simple to fix. So when I hear my opponents talk about, well, I'm going to spend this kind of money, it's going to fix healthcare, you know, maybe if they just knew a little more about the challenges, it wouldn't be quite quite a clear statement as that. Where we need to go in healthcare is basically we have a lot of training to do to help people get a different access to primary care. So it's through like eVisit, it's through HealthLink, it's through nurse practitioners, pharmacists, paramedics. Last year, paramedics diverted 24,000 calls from coming to the hospital, because when they got to the home on a 911 call, the patient didn't need to go. They said they did all the vitals, so you don't need to go to the ER. So it's about, okay, if people go to the ER because they don't have another place to go. So it's training on different access points. Collaborative care clinics are what we've been working on around the province and have many in service now. And that will continue because doctors they want a life too. And new doctors, you know, see a lot less patients per day or on their client list as the retirement doctors do. Usually it's about a third. And that's why we need to have a greater scope of practice. We need to have, you know, the ability for doctors to see more, but others to see more patients. The biggest opportunity, I think, that goes along with that is in relation to our two health authorities working together to deliver health care. Today, they would compete with each other. And, you know, we need visibility in the entire health network. That's why I made the management changes a few years ago. It was to get a view into all of the health services in our province and to give parents a choice, or patients a choice, sorry. So it's kind of like a patient-first strategy, so that if you can't get a service where you live, the doctor says, but I could get you in here in another month. But you're going to have to wait 6 months here because of our backlog. But give patients an opportunity. Many patients will say, look, if I could get an operation or I could get into an MRI, you know, I'll travel 2 hours. But have that choice. And then the innovation in healthcare is what we've started. We put $10 million in it last year, and it was to understand and develop a clinical management information system. So we actually can see online the entire capabilities, where the voids are and where the opportunities are to fill the gaps to deliver healthcare when it's needed. Because the bottom line is, we should not have patients that have a critical care item, and just because they can't get the service in right where they live right at that time, it goes beyond what's an acceptable time frame. And we're bringing visibility to My Health is an app that brings on now online lab tests. It brings online your information for blood tests, book x-rays, and it gives the MRI list of wait times. And we have it for Horizon, we want it for Vitality, because it can work both ways, and it doesn't matter if it's a francophone or anglophone hospital, it's service in New Brunswick given on a bilingual basis.
How would your government address the shortage of healthcare professionals and improve services across New Brunswick? I know you've addressed this a little bit.
I think I did, you know, in that sense, because we recognize that everyone is wanting more doctors. We've increased the number of nurses that are being are going through an education process now. Our healthcare professionals, we've doubled that. When we started, it was about 800 a year that were graduating. It's now 1,650. We shortened the timelines down to 3 years. Remember, nurses used to go through the system, a 2-year program. Well, LPNs do that now, but RNs used to go through a 2-year program. Now it's a 3-year. We dropped it down to 4, working with the universities. So we now are bringing in more nurses than are retiring. So we're gaining on that situation. There's still a challenge. We still have vacancies, and every nurse that graduates, we have a place for them because we need them. And I guess it's a process, and I think anyone that thinks it's simple, it's easy, it's not. If it was, it would have been fixed long ago. It's been a challenge for a lot of years, and it's a challenge now. Our demographic certainly is aging, but the new population and all. But innovation in healthcare is the key.
The housing crisis is a significant issue in New Brunswick. What strategies would you implement to increase affordable housing and address homelessness?
So on the housing side of it, we know that given the population growth, what we've seen, all of a sudden apartments that had high vacancy rates, well, that's not the case anymore. People that bought, their apartments in new buildings, landlords that bought new buildings, fixed them up, and then they go to a market rate. So what we put in place was a staging market rate so that it didn't jump all of a sudden. We basically has to go through it's like a rent control system. So tenants that were there for a long time, they just can't jump it up. It has some guideposts, I would say, and then the housing. We're building houses. We got 6,000 new units under construction right now. We put a program together with about $500 million invested in it. We started NB Housing, and then we have contracts with I think 4 or 5 modular home manufacturers that we are building and now placing those around the province. What we've basically, in addition to the crisis around the housing needs, we found that rent has become an issue because a lot of the cheaper rents are not available. So it created a homeless issue. We have subsidized homes now that we're working with developers. So we're paying part of that, so they come in at a lower price. There's a path here that one, they became homeless because they couldn't afford their home, and then we have another challenge with homelessness and related to drugs and drug addiction and the challenges we have on the street, and which brings crime rates up. So I don't know that if you have a question related to that, but this whole concept of it's not good enough to have people on the street living on drugs. We've made it very clear that we don't believe a life on drugs is a future that gives people hope. And the Compassionate Intervention Act is just that. It's a way for us to help someone who can't help themselves. I just can't, be in a position that we walk on by someone that's living on the street in the middle of February, and you don't know whether they're going to survive the night or not, but because they don't want help, we leave them there. That just doesn't seem like the right thing to do. And we're seeing the change in that philosophy right across the country. BC has now changed their view, and they've been, into the safe injection, so-called safe injection for a long time. Yukon's changing their view. We're all kind of, I think, at a phase that something has to change because it just isn't good enough that people live on the streets.
What are the biggest challenges facing New Brunswick's education system, and how would you address them?
Well, we could talk about that for a while. Something we introduced just a week or two ago. It was a financial literacy program. And I think what really brings us to mind is we've seen over the past 2 years a big change, past 3 or 4 years really, a big move for parents trying to enroll their kids in private schools. And so that would tell me, why is our public school system not meeting the needs of these parents who have taken this sort of move, or other parents that maybe feel the same way? So here was junior achievers that came to my office. This would be 5 months ago. And they came in and said, we have a curriculum for our school system. And so I was very interested to hear more. I have a lot of time for junior achievers and what they're trying to do to build to educate new minds and develop them into entrepreneurship and really kind of make a difference and help map out their future. And they said, we have kids in grade 8, grade 9 that are coming in that have no financial acumen at all. So we're trying to work with them in the very basics of, whether it's the spending and understanding the banks and bank books, or as you go along, then you get into mortgages and all that stuff. But this is basic stuff I'm talking about. And they said, here's a curriculum. So they handed us a curriculum and said it is both official languages. It's a lesson plan laid out for 1 term or 2 terms. We're recommending grade 8. I'm saying, well, they're saying this is, you can hand this to the teachers, and away it goes. So I sent it to the Department of Education and said, evaluate this. But imagine, here's a group of outside citizens that are basically saying, we need to get to the basics of what kids need to know when they come out of school. So we called it, this is getting back to basics. So how many other areas do we need to focus on curriculum and focus on, what kids need to do to be successful? They'll learn a lot of other stuff as they get older, but how do we just stay focused and have a consistency? So when our kids come out of our schools, they have the ability to think. And they have the ability to, whatever path they choose is their choice as they get older. But we need to give them the best education possible. And in a province like New Brunswick, the added part of that is, I feel that every child that's graduating from our schools should be able to speak both official languages, conversationally. Be able to talk back and forth and what we found, or I've found, when I travel around, is that it's really neat to go into communities where they flip back and forth from one language to another, and it's a social interaction. It's like a night out in both languages, or a night out in this hockey tournament's going to be all in French or all in English. Imagine if you had a hockey tournament all in French here in St. Andrews, and the same do the same thing all in English up in Tracadie. It's just that social interaction will bring our province together. And it doesn't become an issue of one culture versus the other. It becomes an issue of how do we find the benefits of really being a bilingual province.
How does your party plan to tackle climate change?
We're doing it. So we have we've increased in our energy plan. We're doubling. Well, we were going for 1,400 megawatts, and we're, I think, around 300 or so of wind and solar power. And our target is 1,400. We have a situation with today where we have a very diverse electrical supply. Nuclear is always going to be a big component for the power we need in the future. We have two technologies we're working with on SMRs, but the small modular reactors. But there's 26 that are being evaluated, including our 2. We need to work with bigger companies, and we're working with Point Lepreau now, with OPG, with Bruce Power, basically to look at the next generation of nuclear energy. They're helping us with operations in Point Lepreau. We've had some issues here of late that we're working on, but they were getting the efficiency of Point Lepreau up by 20% from 65 to 85. So they really were making good gains, and then we got into this generator problem. But the idea, I think, is that we need to work with some bigger players on our operation of nuclear, our ability to play in that sandbox in the future, because we're not a big enough province to develop nuclear, the next technology, on our own. And that's our focus. The other aspect that I talk a lot about is in relation to the whole natural gas issue and understanding more about that in our communities. Because we see it happening in the U.S., we see it happening in out west, in BC, in Alberta, and the First Nations directly involved in these investments to send natural gas, LNG, around the world to shut down coal plants. And for every coal plant that we shut down with natural gas, we reduce emissions by about 60%. So when you think about our own little bubble here, and you think Canada is 1.8% of world emissions, New Brunswick is a fraction of that. And when you think of that, you're saying, but we can punch well above our weight, have a huge economic benefit at the same time, and be a major player. And for anyone that suggests there is no business case is absolutely false. I've met a year or 2 years ago with countries in Europe, and they're crying for Canadian energy. We haven't helped them a bit. So with the crisis going on in Ukraine and Russia, they're still buying Russian oil and gas because they have to. And we haven't helped a bit. So there's a transition here for the next 15, 20 years. These countries would sign up for a 20-year deal. Repsol would spend $3 billion here, and we could lock this in and we have the gas, 80 trillion standard cubic feet of gas here in New Brunswick. So other places are doing it all around us, and we're sitting here on this resource. And I would just encourage that we can have that dialogue, lay it all on the table, and let's have an open, frank discussion about the pros, cons, benefits, financial, environmental, and really talk about it, because it is an economic windfall for New Brunswick.
Last question before we bring Kathy out. What specific plan do you have to boost economic development in New Brunswick, particularly in rural areas, and how would you work with local governments to achieve these goals?
All right. Well, as you've seen, we have been a government that really kind of pushes the envelope a bit to make things happen. So we dealt with a 2008 report on municipal reform, and we reduced the number of municipalities from 320 or 308 down to about 94 or something like that. And in doing that and having that consolidation, the idea was, okay, we have 12 regions in the province, and now we look at the economic strengths of their regions. So the next phase of the municipal reform was the fiscal reform. And that's what we're going through right now. So that is a complete view into every region as it exists now in the new format, and saying, okay, what are the strengths? What are the needs? How do we balance that out with the potential for economic growth? So we don't pit one region off against another, but we analyze the strengths. Because the goal is that every region becomes economically sustainable on its own. Excuse me. There will always be the principle of the equal opportunity and how we ensure that communities are not going behind in that regard. So we'll always have that oversight, but this next 6 months is critical. We started back in August, probably July, and it was the plan, and it's being worked on now, and we hope to continue it, is to carry on and with legislation in the spring in order to bring in a whole new fiscal reform model. And in doing so, you look at things like taxation, you look at things like, we know property assessments. People are saying, well, my property is assessed higher than it was. Maybe it's up 30%, but their tax bill's gone up by the same amount. And I would say, well, you're not arguing about your property value, but you are maybe questioning the tax rate. So working with municipalities, because the revenue for municipalities comes from that tax rate that they decide what it's going to be. But I think in this whole model, you say, okay, what do you need? And how do we make it fair for property owners?
Thank you so much. And we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we will be joined by Kathy Bockus.
All right, very good. Thank you.
We are going to take a quick break, but when we come back, the candidate for St. Croix, Kathy Bockus, will be joining us right here in the studio.
Ever wonder how election results from a tabulation machine are reported and validated? On election night, a special key and a password are used to close the poll on every tabulation machine. Each machine prints 2 results tapes, which are signed by an election official and any candidate representatives who might be present. One tape is returned to the returning office, the other is kept by the election officer. Next, a modem is connected, which then securely transmits a results file to Election New Brunswick headquarters. If there is no signal, the results are telephoned in. Result files are first confirmed to be authentic and are then sent to our website as unofficial results. The morning after the election, each returning officer checks that the printed results tapes match the digital results sent on election night. Finally, in the presence of candidate representatives, each returning officer conducts a hand count on a sample ballot box to validate the digital results. Get the election facts from your trusted election source. Visit electionsnb.ca.
Welcome back to Southwest Magazine. We are once again joined by the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party for New Brunswick, Blaine Higgs, along with Progressive Conservative candidate for St. Croix, Kathy Bockus. Thank you both for being here.
Very welcome. Thanks for having us.
I'd love to start off by asking, why is Kathy the right candidate for St. Croix?
Well, I think she's what I knew at the beginning, but she's proven that in the last 4 years. I mean, she's well-established journalist, writer here, and so knew the community very well. I remember very early on in the debate on their first campaign, and I went to it to listen to it, and she was being asked all kinds of questions by the reporters. And I was so impressed with her level and depth of knowledge on the issue. And so that's what I've experienced certainly now firsthand in the last 4 years. And so she gets under the hood on issues. She's very compassionate about the people that she's representing, and she brings that to Fredericton. And so I'm honored to have her continue as a candidate, and I'm looking forward to the next 4 years.
And Kathy, why should people vote for you?
Well, he's made me blush now, so I guess because I know what I'm doing now. I've had 4 years experience. I kind of knew what I was getting into beforehand because I worked a little bit with Greg Thompson and in his constituency office. And I enjoy working with people. I enjoy making things happen for people. I know the area, I know the issues, and I know the people. We've been here, Walter and I, for almost 30 years. So you get to know people well, either through church and especially through work. When I was a journalist at the Courier newspaper, my goodness, we were going all the time. And I got to know a lot of people and a lot of issues and a lot of groups and organizations, and I still know them today. So, yeah, I think I'm a good fit.
Why is your party the right party to lead New Brunswick right now? I'll have you both answer, but I'll start with you, Kathy.
Okay. Why are we the right party? Because we have the right leader. Earlier in the show, he's explained a lot of things, but we really care about people. We really do. I've sat around the caucus table and the cabinet table, and that's our first and foremost goal, is to make life better for the people of New Brunswick. I was very honored to be appointed as minister responsible for seniors, and I loved that role. I really did. We introduced the low-income seniors benefit for seniors, raising up from $400 to $600. We flip-flopped the income retention for a couple, one spouse in the nursing home and one spouse at home. It was 40% for the spouse at home, 60% for the spouse in the nursing home. They didn't have enough to live on at home, so we flipped that to make it more affordable. And we've we've prolonged and supported the Nursing Home Without Walls program to make it easier for seniors to stay in their own homes longer. And my biggest thrill as a minister was to have the caring and clothing allowance for the nursing home and special care home residents increased. It hadn't been increased since 2007. So when I went to the Premier and the rest of Cabinet and said, listen, we've got to do something with this, it was $105 a month, and we agreed to put it up to $150 a month for the residents in the nursing homes, and it was $135 a month for the special care home residents, and we put it up to $195 a month. And I got so much feedback from the nursing homes and the residents and the special care homes as well, the administrators. So I'm very proud to be part of this party, and I think we're doing a great job, and we just have to keep on building.
And last words with Mr. Higgs. Why is your party the right party to lead New Brunswick right now?
I guess certainly in addition to what Kathy said, we went through about 20 years of revolving governments every 4 years, and that really hurt the vision and the progress, and because every new government comes in and thinks, well, I got to just do away with what the past government did and start again. But we have a record that we're actually can run on. I mean, not only a fiscal record where we balanced 6 budgets in a row. We haven't raised taxes at all. We're reducing taxes, and we're doing it again in this actual campaign. But we're finding ways to innovate in the delivery of service, and we're finding ways to find departments that work together. Now, we learned some of that during COVID. I don't want to go through COVID again. It was an experience, but our first year we had a major flood. Second 2 years we had COVID, so it was that was a learning time. So we don't need training wheels. I did come with a number of years' experience in the business world, but what we're trying to bring into the world of government is everyone being engaged in the solution. We had a 1 GNB concept during COVID. We've moved that into delivery of service, so departments work together rather than just shift it off to another department and then kind of let it sit. And it's not easy to do that. And when I think of the civil service and how difficult it must be when a new government comes in and they just completely change the philosophies and how they look forward to the next issue because it's totally different, it must be very, I guess, demoralizing in many ways, because good projects they're working on can be just poof, gone. So New Brunswick is clearly on a roll. We're clearly moving in a direction we haven't moved for generations. And that is really cannot be disputed. We have people coming here in record numbers. Schools that are growing now. We have 9,000 new students. We were closing schools in 2018. And yes, the growth pains are real, but it's something we need. When I first came in, we had people saying, I need more people to work. I don't have enough people to work. Well, I'm not getting that now. You know, we don't have a labor shortage in certain provisions, certain skill sets, sure. But generally, we have people that are able to work. I think our unemployment rate is the lowest it's ever been, and one of the lowest in the region or in the country. So these are clear signs of progress. And do we want to throw that all away, and end up with a government that's not only would need training wheels, but lacks, I guess, in clear terms, or this is an election, a real vision for the next steps in developing our province.
Well, thank you so much for both taking the time to come in and sit with us today. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Thank you.
Certainly our pleasure, Vicki. Thank you for the opportunity.
My guests today have been the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party of New Brunswick, Blaine Higgs, and the St. Croix Progressive Conservative candidate, Kathy Bockus. I'm Vicki Hogarth. Thank you for watching Southwest Magazine.
Southwest Magazine is a news and public affairs production of CHCO Television.